The hospital lights were cold and too bright as I sat in the waiting room, holding back tears. My phone buzzed again and again, but I already knew who it was. The babysitter I had begged and begged to come in last minute was calling to say she couldn't stay any longer. I was trapped in surgery prep, about to be rolled into the operating room, with no one to care for my 3-year-old twins, Emma and Eli. I had trusted my parents when they promised they would be there. They even said they would come early. But when I called them, all I heard was loud music, laughter, and my mother's voice shouting over the noise, "We're at a concert, Emma. Stop being a burden for once." I stayed at the phone, unable to believe it. My parents, my own parents, had left me alone on one of the scariest days of my life. They chose a concert over me and my babies. Nurses were already wheeling me away, and I had no idea where my children were going to end up. Tears blurred my vision. My heart pounded. I had no choice but to trust strangers to take care of them while I was unconscious. But a terrible feeling grew in my stomach. Something was wrong. Something much bigger than I could see. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about today. This was the start of everything falling apart. Life hadn't always been like this. Growing up, I thought my parents were the best. My mom, Denise, was the kind of woman who showed up to every school play with flowers. My dad, Mark, would help me with science projects and take me for ice cream when I had a bad day. We weren't rich, but we were happy, or at least I thought we were. But after I had the twins at 23, everything changed. I hadn't planned on becoming a single mom. Their father, Chris, was gone before I even brought them home from the hospital. He wasn't ready for responsibility, and he made that very clear by blocking my number and disappearing from our lives. My parents said they would help. "We're family," they said. "Family sticks together." At first, they did. They bought diapers. They watched the babies while I went to doctor's appointments. They even stayed the night sometimes when the twins were sick. But slowly, things shifted. They started complaining when I asked for help. If I needed them to watch the kids, it became an argument. If I was late picking them up, I got a dozen angry texts. When I mentioned how hard it was balancing work and motherhood, my mother would say things like, "Well, no one told you to have kids so young." When I got offered a better job that needed longer hours, I thought they'd be proud. Instead, my dad said, "Sounds like you're just making your problems bigger." I told myself they were just stressed, that they still loved me and the kids. I didn't have anyone else to rely on, so I had to believe that. But that illusion shattered the day I found out I needed surgery. It wasn't anything small either. Doctors found a mass on my kidney that needed to be removed. They said it was urgent but manageable. Still, it meant I'd be under anesthesia for hours and out of work for weeks while I recovered. The first people I called were my parents. I explained everything. I cried, asking for their help. I said it was only for a few days until I got back on my feet. They agreed. I even heard my mom say, "Of course, Emma, we'll take care of everything." Relief flooded me. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe. Leading up to the surgery, things were rocky but manageable. They watched the twins while I went to appointments, though my mom sighed loudly whenever she had to change a diaper, and my dad complained about the toys being everywhere. I noticed they stopped answering my calls sometimes or were too busy to help with little things. But I told myself they were just tired. Everyone gets tired. I ignored the signs. The morning of my surgery, I dropped Emma and Eli at their house with their little backpacks and stuffed animals. My mom barely looked up from her phone when I kissed them goodbye. "Good luck or whatever," she said. My chest tightened, but I forced a smile. "Thanks, Mom. I'll call when I wake up." At the hospital, I changed into the scratchy gown. I clutched my phone, waiting for the nurse to come in. My surgery was in an hour. I texted Mom just to double-check everything was okay. No reply. I called. No answer. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. "Don't worry about us. We're out having fun. You're fine." Confused, I called again. Finally, my dad answered. I could barely hear him over the pounding bass in the background. "What's wrong with you?" he yelled. "You're ruining our night. Stop being a burden for once." I sat there, stunned, the phone slipping from my fingers. My parents weren't watching the twins. They were at a concert. They left them. The nurse poked her head into the room. Ready, honey? My throat closed up. No, I croaked. But it didn't matter. They wheeled me away anyway. As I lay on the operating table, the lights spinning above me, all I could think about was Emma and Eli, alone, scared, abandoned. And I couldn't do anything to help them. Not yet. Because when I woke up, things were going to be much worse than I ever imagined. When I woke up, the hospital room was dark except for the glow of a small lamp on the wall. My mouth was dry, my body heavy from the anesthesia. For a moment, I couldn't even remember why I was there. Then it hit me. Emma. Eli. I struggled to sit up, yanking at the four in my arm. Panic shot through me like ice water. Where were they? Who was with them? The heart monitor beeped wildly as I tried to swing my legs over the side of the bed. A nurse rushed in, her sneakers squeaking against the floor. Whoa, whoa, whoa. MIA. You need to stay still, she said gently, putting her hands on my shoulders. My kids, I gasped. Where are my kids? The nurse's face shifted from calm to concern. Hold on, let me check. She disappeared into the hallway, leaving me shivering and breathless. I gripped the thin hospital blanket, my mind spinning with terrible thoughts. What if something happened to them? What if they were hurt? Or worse, because I trusted the wrong people. Minutes felt like hours until the nurse came back. She gave me a tight, forced smile. They're safe. They are with the hospital social worker for now. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, for now? I whispered. She hesitated. Your emergency contacts weren't reachable. Standard procedure is to involve social services until a family member can be located. I felt like I was going to throw up. I hadn't just been abandoned. I had put my kids at risk of being taken away. Because my parents went to a concert. Tears welled up in my eyes. I turned my face into the pillow and cried harder than I had in years. I cried for myself, for my babies, for the huge mistake I made trusting people who didn't deserve it. After a while, I wiped my eyes and forced myself to think clearly. I needed to get to my kids. I needed to fix this. No one else was going to save us. It took 2 days before the hospital let me see them. 2 whole days where I couldn't hold my babies. 2 whole days where strangers rocked them to sleep, fed them, comforted them when they cried out for me. The nurses tried to keep me calm, but my mind raced with worry. What if the twins thought I abandoned them too? What if they were scared and confused? The nurses tried to keep me calm, but my mind raced with worry. What if the twins thought I abandoned them too? What if they were scared and confused? When I was finally allowed to see them, a kind social worker named Mrs. Clark wheeled me into a small, colorful room filled with toys and books. Emma and Eli were sitting on the floor, clutching their stuffed animals, looking so tiny and lost. The moment they saw me, they lit up. "Mama!" they cried, running to me. I gathered them into my arms, feeling their little bodies shake with sobs. I kissed their hair over and over, whispering, I'm here, I'm so sorry. Mrs. Clark gave us a few minutes alone before she gently cleared her throat. We need to talk about what happens next, she said. My heart squeezed. What do you mean? Given the situation, you'll need to prove you have a stable support system. Otherwise, the twins might be placed in temporary foster care while you recover. The world tilted under me. Foster care? No. I had lost so much already. I couldn't lose them too. Mrs. Clark must have seen the fear in my eyes because she softened her voice. Is there anyone else you can call? Friends? Other family? I thought hard. My parents were out of the question. Chris was gone. My extended family lived across the country. But then I remembered someone. Samantha. My old college roommate. We had drifted apart after school, but she had always been kind, and she lived only 20 minutes away. It was a long shot, but it was all I had. I dialed her number with shaking fingers, praying she would answer. After a few rings, I heard her familiar voice. MIA. Oh my God, it's been forever. Hearing her made me want to cry again. I explained everything, about the surgery, the twins, my parents. There was a long pause. Then Samantha said, Of course I'll help. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Relief flooded me so fast I nearly dropped the phone. Maybe not everyone was like my parents. Maybe there were still good people left. Samantha showed up exactly when she said she would, wearing a big smile and carrying a bag of snacks for the kids. She scooped Emma and Eli into a hug like she had known them their whole lives. Mrs. Clark seemed impressed. After some paperwork and a quick background check, it was decided Samantha would be our temporary guardian while I healed. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the life I imagined. But it was hope. And that was more than I had yesterday. For the next week, Samantha visited me in the hospital every day. She brought the twins after preschool and told me funny stories to keep my spirits up. She cooked meals, helped with laundry, even organized my medications for when I was discharged. She never once called me a burden. She never once made me feel like an inconvenience. She acted like helping me was the most natural thing in the world. I couldn't stop thinking about the contrast between her kindness and my parents' cruelty. It hurt, but it also opened my eyes. Family wasn't always blood. Family was who showed up. Just when I thought things were settling down, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. "Hope you're feeling better. We want to talk. Call us when you can." I stared at the message, my stomach twisting. After everything, now they wanted to talk. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But before I could decide what to do, there was a loud knock at my hospital door. When I looked up, my parents were standing there, and they weren't alone. They had brought someone with them, someone who would change everything that I'd learned, thinking maybe I was seeing things. But no, standing right beside my parents was a woman I had never seen before. She looked about their age, dressed sharply in a business suit, holding a thick file in her arms. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. "Who is that?" I asked, my voice dry and scratchy. The woman stepped forward, offering a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hello, MIA. I'm Patricia. I'm a family court liaison. Your parents asked me to come with them today." Family court? I couldn't even form words. I just stared at her, then at my parents, who had the nerve to smile at me like they hadn't just abandoned me and my children when I needed them most. "We're here because we're worried about you," Mom said sweetly, her voice fake enough to make my skin crawl. "We think it might be best if we took temporary custody of Emma and Eli. Just until you're fully recovered, of course." I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't an apology. This wasn't concern. This was a setup. They wanted to take my kids. I gripped the edges of the hospital blanket so tightly my knuckles turned white. Patricia took a seat at the small table by the window, flipping open the file. "Given the recent reports from social services and your hospitalization, your parents have filed for emergency guardianship." "No," I said instantly. My voice cracked, but I didn't care. "Absolutely not." Dad frowned, stepping forward like he could intimidate me into submission. "MIA, be reasonable. You can barely take care of yourself. The kids need stability." The same man who called me a burden, who chose a concert over my children's safety, now wanted to play hero. The rage boiling inside me made my vision blur. "Samantha is taking care of them," I said, my voice shaking with fury. "She's doing a better job in a week than you ever did in a lifetime." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Samantha, my college friend. She's my temporary guardian support. Social services approved her." There was a long, awkward pause. My mom's face twitched, the smile faltering. They hadn't expected that. They thought they'd be sweeping into a disaster scene. Instead, they found me standing, well, sitting, stronger than they imagined. Patricia cleared her throat. "I'll have to verify that. If that's true, and she's been cleared, then the court will decide whether children stay during your recovery." "And it won't be with them," I said firmly, pointing to my parents. "Not after they abandon their responsibility." My voice echoed in the room, louder and stronger than I felt. Patricia closed the file slowly. "I'll be following up." And with that, she stood and walked out, leaving my parents standing awkwardly by my bed. Mom's mask cracked first. "You're so ungrateful, MIA. We're just trying to help." I looked them dead in the eyes. "You're trying to steal my kids because you think I'm weak." Dad scowled. "You're not thinking clearly. When you crash and burn, don't come crying to us." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Their actions spoke louder than any words ever could. They turned on their heels and left, the door slamming shut behind them. I lay back against the pillows, my whole body trembling. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Later that night, Samantha snuck into my hospital room with a bag of tacos and milkshakes. "You look like you need a treat," she joked, trying to lighten the mood. I laughed weakly, the tension draining out of me little by little. I told her everything that happened. She listened quietly, chewing on a fry. When I finished, she set the food down and looked me straight in the eyes. "They are scared," she said simply. "They are scared because you're stronger than they ever gave you credit for." I blinked. "I don't feel strong." "You are," she insisted. "And you're not alone. I'm here. And there are going to be people who rally around you. You just have to let them." Tears filled my eyes again, but this time, they weren't just from fear. They were from hope. The next morning, I got a call from Mrs. Clark, the social worker. "MIA," she said warmly. "We've verified Samantha's guardianship. Everything is in order. No changes will be made." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Thank God. But then she added something that made my heart skip a beat. "One more thing. You should be aware, your parents have hired a lawyer. They're filing a petition for full custody." Full custody. They weren't giving up. They were escalating. And I would have to fight harder than ever to keep my family together. Later that afternoon, Samantha showed up again, this time with a folder full of documents. "What's all this?" I asked, confused. "A plan," she said, her eyes sparkling with determination. "We're going to fight back. Properly. Legally. And you're going to win." Hope sparked inside me again. Maybe, just maybe, we had a chance. But just as we were going over the plan, my hospital door creaked open, and in walked someone I never thought I'd see again. Someone from my past. Someone who could destroy everything. The moment I saw her, my stomach twisted into a knot. It was my estranged sister, Jessica. I hadn't spoken to her in nearly 4 years. Not after she stole from me, lied about it, and left our family in shambles. And now here she was, standing in my hospital room like she belonged there, like no time had passed. Jessica's eyes flickered to Samantha, then to the papers spread out on my bed. She gave a tight, fake smile. "Long time no see, MIA. What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice cold. Jessica didn't answer right away. She walked slowly into the room, her heels clicking against the floor like little warning shots. "Finally," she said, "Mom and Dad asked me to come." I felt Samantha tense beside me. Jessica's gaze hardened. "They think you're unstable. They're worried about the twins." I gritted my teeth. "They're not worried. They're controlling. And you're just helping them because it benefits you." Jessica shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe I just think Emma and Eli deserve better." My heart pounded. I couldn't believe this was happening. First my parents, now Jessica. Was everyone determined to tear my family apart? Jessica pulled a piece of paper from her purse and tossed it onto the bed. It was a notice to appear in family court. A formal custody hearing had been scheduled, and it was sooner than I expected. Only 2 weeks away. 2 weeks to prepare for the biggest fight of my life. After Jessica left, the room felt colder. I couldn't eat. I could barely sleep. Samantha sat beside me, flipping through documents, outlining a plan, but all I could think about was how fast everything was spinning out of control. "Don't panic," Samantha said firmly. "We've got this. We're going to find witnesses. People who've seen you with the twins. People who know how good you are." I nodded numbly. "Who would help?" Samantha smiled. "Leave that to me." The next morning, Samantha got to work. She called my neighbors, my old co-workers, even Emma and Eli's preschool teachers. Slowly but surely, she built a list of people willing to vouch for me. Meanwhile, I focused on healing. Every day I forced myself to get up, walk a few steps further, push through the pain. The thought of losing my babies gave me strength I didn't know I had. Mrs. Clark visited again and gave me advice on how to present myself in court. Stay calm. Focus on facts. Show that you have a support system. I nodded, soaking up every word like a sponge. A few nights later, I was lying awake, staring at the ceiling when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You're going to lose. Give up now before you embarrass yourself. My blood ran cold. Another text came through immediately after. You're an unfit mother. Everyone knows it. Tears welled up in my eyes. I knew exactly who was behind the messages. Jessica. She was trying to scare me. Trying to break me. I locked my phone and shoved it under my pillow, determined not to let her see me crack. But deep down, fear gnawed at me. What if they were right? What if I wasn't enough? The next day, Samantha arrived with good news. I found something, she said, practically bursting with excitement. Remember how your parents said you were unstable and irresponsible? I nodded. Well, I dug around a little. Turns out, your parents left town 3 months ago without telling anyone. They rented out their house and went on a cruise for 2 weeks. My mouth fell open. What? They didn't even check on the twins. You were the one holding everything together. She handed me printouts of emails, lease agreements, and social media posts. Proof. Cold. Hard proof. It was like a ray of sunshine breaking through the storm clouds. For the first time in days, I smiled. We had something real. Something the court couldn't ignore. The week before the court date, Samantha helped organize a mock trial. We practiced answering questions. We rehearsed staying calm under pressure. We even picked out a professional outfit for me to wear. I felt a little stronger with every passing day. But just when things were starting to look up, there was a knock on the hospital door. A nurse poked her head in. MIA. There's someone here to see you. Who? I asked, frowning. The nurse hesitated. He says he's your husband. My heart stopped. My husband? That wasn't possible. My husband, Trevor, had walked out on me before the twins were even born. I hadn't seen or heard from him in years. Why was he here now? And what did he want? I sat frozen as the door creaked open wider, and there he was. Trevor. He looked different, older, rougher. His once neat brown hair was messy, and there were deep lines around his eyes. He walked into the room slowly, carrying a worn-out backpack slung over one shoulder. I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or throw something at him. Hey, MIA, he said, almost shyly. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice shaking with anger. Trevor shuffled awkwardly. I heard about the surgery, about the kids. Thought maybe you could use some help. Help? From the man who abandoned me when I needed him most. I crossed my arms tightly. Where have you been, Trevor? You left before they were even born. He winced like I had slapped him. I know. I messed up. But I want to make it right now. I didn't trust him. Not one bit. But before I could kick him out, Samantha leaned in close and whispered, Let's hear him out. He could be a wild card. If he supports you in court, it could crush your parents' case. I hated the idea. Hated needing anything from Trevor. But she was right. I forced myself to take a deep breath. Fine. Talk. Trevor sat down across from me, wringing his hands. I've been clean for a year. I'm working steady. I want to be there for Emma and Eli, if you'll let me. Part of me wanted to believe him. The other part screamed that this was a trick, that he would only make things worse. Are you willing to testify in court? I asked sharply. He nodded immediately. Anything. I'll tell the judge I abandoned you. That you raised the twins on your own. That you're the best mom they could ever have. The words were exactly what I needed, but could I really trust him? For the next few days, Trevor hung around the hospital, visiting during approved hours. He was careful, polite, almost desperate to show he had changed. Samantha grilled him on every detail of his life, his job, his recovery, his living situation. To my surprise, most of his answers checked out. Still, I kept him at arm's length. One evening, Trevor asked if he could visit Emma and Eli. I hesitated but finally agreed, supervised, and only for a short time. When the twins saw him, they were shy at first. But Trevor pulled out 2 tiny stuffed animals from his backpack, and their faces lit up. They hugged him awkwardly, like hugging a stranger. I watched from the doorway, my heart aching. Maybe people could change. Maybe. The night before the court hearing, Samantha stayed late at the hospital. We went over everything, documents, witness lists, even my outfit for court. I'm proud of you, MIA, she said softly. No matter what happens, you fought for them. That matters. Tay stung my eyes. Thank you. I couldn't have done any of this without you. She squeezed my hand. You're stronger than you think. The next morning, I woke up to a flurry of activity. Nurses coming and going. Phone calls buzzing. I sat up slowly, heart pounding, feeling the weight of everything crashing down. Today was the day. Court. I dressed carefully in the outfit Samantha picked. A navy blue dress, simple but strong. I pulled my hair back neatly, even though my hands trembled. Just as I was about to leave for court, a nurse rushed into the room, her face pale. MIA, she said breathlessly, there's a problem. What happened? I asked, dread rising in my throat. It's your parents, she said. They filed an emergency motion this morning for temporary custody of Emma and Eli. My knees went weak. An emergency motion. This was worse than I thought. If the judge granted it, they could take the twins immediately, before we even had a chance to fight. I clutched the edge of the bed, my mind spinning. How do we stop it? I whispered. Samantha, who had just arrived, answered firmly. We fight harder. Right now. She grabbed her bag, stuffed full of evidence and witness statements. Let's go. We're not giving up. I nodded, swallowing my fear. We raced to the courthouse, my heart thudding in my ears with every mile. When we got there, the scene was pure chaos. My parents were already in the courtroom, sitting smugly at a polished oak table with their lawyer. Jessica sat behind them, smiling like she'd already won. Trevor was there too, pacing nervously by the door. And somewhere nearby, my babies were waiting, depending on me. The bailiff called my name. It was time. Time to fight for everything that mattered. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and stepped into the courtroom. Right into the storm. The courtroom felt colder than I expected. I gripped Samantha's arm tightly as we walked toward our table. Every step felt heavy, like I was dragging the weight of the last few months behind me. The judge, a tall man with sharp eyes and gray hair, sat high above us, flipping through a thick stack of papers. He glanced up briefly, giving no hint of what he was thinking. My parents sat across the room, looking like the picture-perfect grandparents in their polished clothes and fake smiles. Jessica sat smugly behind them, tapping on her phone. I took a deep breath and forced myself not to look away. This was it. The judge cleared his throat. We are here to hear an emergency motion for temporary custody filed by the petitioners, Mr. and Mrs. Sutton, against the respondent, Ms. MIA Sutton. Hearing my full name like that made my chest tighten. Their lawyer stood up first, painting a picture of a reckless, selfish mother too weak and irresponsible to care for her own children. He waved papers dramatically, cited old hospital records from when I was recovering after the twins were born, spun every little mistake I had made into a mountain. He even mentioned my surgery, calling it an inconvenience that proved I couldn't prioritize my kids. I clenched my fists under the table. When he finished, my parents nodded along like puppets, pretending to be heartbroken. Then it was Samantha's turn. She stood confidently, her voice clear and strong. She brought out the truth, how I had worked tirelessly to provide for Emma and Eli, even after Trevor abandoned us. She showed pay stubs, daycare records, statements from teachers and neighbors praising me as a devoted mother. She pointed out how my parents had refused to help me when I needed them most, how they chose a concert over their own grandchildren. Then she did something that shocked everyone. She called Trevor to the stand. I saw my parents' faces twist in confusion. Jessica stopped smiling. Trevor walked up slowly, his hands shaking a little. He raised his right hand and swore to tell the truth. Samantha started her questions. Mr. Turner, where were you when MIA gave birth to the twins? Trevor swallowed hard. I was gone. I left. I was scared, and I made a terrible mistake. And have you been involved in their lives since then? No. Not until now. I regret every second I missed. And why are you here today? Taze welled up in his eyes. Because MIA is the strongest, most loving mother I've ever seen. I'm not proud of what I did, but she raised those kids by herself. She didn't deserve to be abandoned. Not by me, not by anyone. The courtroom was silent. I blinked rapidly, trying to hold back my own tears. Even the judge seemed to pause a little longer before speaking again. After a few more questions, Trevor stepped down. My parents' lawyer tried to object, tried to paint Trevor as unreliable, but it was too late. The damage was done. Samantha rested our case with confidence. The judge shuffled through his papers again, frowning deeply. "I have heard enough," he finally said. His voice was stern, heavy with meaning. "It is clear to this court that Ms. Sutton is a capable, loving, and responsible mother. The motion for temporary custody is denied." The gavel hit the desk with a loud crack. I gasped. I had won. Emma and Eli would stay with me. Samantha grinned and squeezed my hand. Trevor gave a small, relieved smile from across the room. My parents, meanwhile, looked like they had been slapped. Jessica grabbed her purse and stormed out, her heels clicking angrily against the marble floor. I didn't watch them leave. I only had eyes for the future. After the hearing, I hugged Samantha tightly. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for believing in me." "You did all the hard work," she said, smiling. As we walked outside, the sun felt warmer, brighter. Emma and Eli were waiting with a hospital volunteer nearby, holding little signs they had color that said, "We love you, Mommy." I ran to them, scooping them up in my arms. Everything I had fought for, cried for, prayed for, it was all right here. Trevor stood a little off to the side, unsure of his place. I gave him a small nod, a sign that maybe, just maybe, we could figure out a way to move forward, at least for the sake of the twins. That night, back at the hospital, we celebrated with ice cream cups and bedtime stories. Emma and Eli laughed and snuggled close to me, their little hands gripping mine. I realized something important. Family isn't always about blood. Family is about who shows up, who stays, who fights for you when things get hard. And no matter what, I would always fight for them. Always.